and you're watching NDTV 24/7.
For close to 2 decades now, one of the biggest environment and health challenges facing us in urban India is the deteriorating quality of our air. Recent statistics have shown that out of the top most polluted cities in the world, 13 are in India, with Delhi leading the charge. Having all of this knowledge and knowing that the air that we're breathing is practically slowly killing us every day, the well-known statistics of a death every hour from air pollution, the big question that needs to be asked is why are we as the people or the government doing nothing about this? And worse, we're imperiling the life of our future generation, the children. Nearly a third of the city's children have irreversible lung damage. So the big questions that need to be asked is why are we doing nothing about it and what can be done about it?
Over 600,000 Indians die every year from breathing toxic air. About 9/10 of the air pollution-related deaths are caused by cardiopulmonary disease and the rest by lung cancer. While this sounds like a high number, the statistics could be a lot worse, as researchers base these numbers on simulations from the year 2000. We actually know for a fact that things are much worse right now. The researchers limited their study to adults of 30 years of age and older. We now know that infants and children are dying as well. What is perhaps almost a criminal act is the number of studies that have been conducted and carried out on air pollution whose results have neither been published or, if published, have been ignored. Most of these studies, carried out from 1998, have shown a roadmap towards where we stand today. Vehicular pollution, industrial pollution, power plant emissions, emissions from burning biomass and traditional fuels have all been looked at.
If you look at the number of vehicles increasing, today we are adding about 1,400 vehicles a day. Millions of tailpipes in the city spewing this toxic gas all the time. And we are seeing the results. So if you look at the new study that has come from Central Pollution Control Board and National Chittaranjan Cancer Research Institute in 2012, it is showing that in Delhi, nearly every third child has impaired lungs.
In 1997, economist Dr. Maureen Cooper, then associated with the World Bank, collaborated with the NDMC, found that deaths due to respiratory and cardiovascular reasons could be linked to air pollution. In 1998, doctors at AIIMS cautioned that on days of extreme pollution, when emissions exceeded the normal standards, emergency room visits for asthma, COPD and acute coronary events increased by 21%, 25% and 24% respectively. At the same time in 1998, Dr. Chabra of the Vallabhbhai Patel Chest Institute found that 20 to 25% of Delhi's adult population with chronic respiratory systems had twice the number of occurrences as their counterparts in rural India. Between 2004 and 2008, a joint study by the National Center for Respiratory Allergy, Asthma and Immunology and researchers from DDU's Geology Department found asthma in 7.7% of 3,500 children aged 7 to 15. In 2007, a study by Delhi IIT Center for Atmospheric Sciences found emissions of pollutants may exceed limits with vehicular growth and concluded that control was required for commercial diesel vehicles in Delhi. But perhaps the most important study that was buried away, ignored and not publicized was the study carried out by the Kolkata-based Chittaranjan National Cancer Institute and the Central Pollution Control Board. In 2012, it found that 43% of 11,000 children studied had poor or restricted lungs, compared to the control group in less polluted areas. Most of these children were said to have irreversible lung damage.
If you go back, that was a time when people would say that in Delhi you just can't go out without your eyes watering.
The Central Pollution Control Board, a government body, in its own report in 2007 under the National Air Quality Monitoring Programme stated that most Indian cities were polluted, with over 80% of them having at least one criteria pollutant exceeding the annual average ambient air quality. Almost 50% of cities evaluated had critical levels of PM10. This study did not even look at PM 2.5. PM is particulate matter. The smaller the number for the particulate matter, the more dangerous for our lungs, as these particles are small enough to penetrate deep into our lung tissues, causing permanent damage. Right now, the PM 2.5 levels in Delhi are 10 times more than the WHO limits. And until the rest of the world declared Delhi to be the most polluted city in the world, more polluted than Beijing, that had been long held as the worst city for air quality, apathy was the official policy towards pollution. All of this apathy and inaction has now led to a city with unbreathable air. Delhi and other parts of India, unlike Beijing, on bad air days, has neither precautionary measures nor a health advisory in place to safeguard its citizens from the hazardous levels of pollution in the air. In February 2015, CSE monitored air pollution levels in buses, autos, the metro, and while walking, mainly to assess the amount of pollution the average citizen is exposed to on a daily basis while traveling in the city. The dust track aerosol monitors used by the CSE measures both mass and size fraction of particulate matter. A real-time monitoring was carried out in different modes of mass transportation during morning and evening traffic peak hours in the first 2 weeks of February. Their average exposure was compared with the background ambient levels monitored by the DPCC at the nearest official monitoring station.
We took out our own monitors. We went all over the city, and it has really helped to break many myths. One big myth is that if you live in seemingly clean environment, you feel as if I'm safe. Delhi Pollution Control Committee, the official monitoring system, is generating one kind of data, which is about how generally your air quality is like in the city. But when we look at the exposure data, they're several times higher than that. So that means that is not adequate to tell us what is my risk today. We took out our machine again, and we found that today those who are using bus, those who are cycling and walking, and those who are part of the solution to the problem of pollution, okay, they are the most vulnerable. We are exposing them enormously to this toxic cocktail all the time.
CSE applied the National Air Quality Index announced by the Ministry of Environment and Forests to the PM 2.5 levels this winter, October 2014 to February 2015. The results showed the number of days with severe levels has remained consistently high all through. In December, 65% of the days were in severe category. In January, it was about 47%. Several smog episodes. Globally, a smog episode is defined as 3 consecutive days when the pollution levels are elevated and remain in the worst category of the air quality index. When CSE applied the criteria to the city's pollution levels, it found that there were at least 12 smog episodes this winter. The big question is why? How has it gotten to this deplorable state? In September 2014, the Green Court had directed Delhi and its neighbouring states to ban petrol vehicles that are older than 15 years. More recently, on April 8th, it ordered diesel vehicles that are over 10 years old to be taken off the roads in Delhi and its neighbouring states. In April this year, the court rapped the governments of Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Haryana for not complying with its orders on tackling pollution. The deadline had been moved to the 1st of May, but nothing so far has been done to change status quo.
As far as vehicular pollution is concerned, we have to deal with it. As we said, that this is one of the most important source of exposure. For the new vehicles, it is very important that we should be able to leapfrog to the best available standards. So we should move to Euro 4 nationwide this year and Euro 6 by 2020. These are the level of emission standards, and we need to do that leapfrog because vehicle numbers are growing. But most important, if we do not have nationwide uniform standards and stringent standards, then the trucks and the buses will not move to better standards. And when trucks enter Delhi, they contribute enormously to the pollution. The other side of the story are that we already have vehicles on the road, and there are old vehicles. Now, we need strategy for old vehicles, no question about that, because old vehicles, which are more 10-year-old, 15-year-old, those vehicles were designed to emit more than the new vehicles. So clearly with age, they are deteriorating and the pollution levels overall is high.
Just standing here for the last 5 minutes trying to do this piece to camera, I can feel my lungs seizing, I can feel a cough coming on, and in generally everything just feels horrible. So we know what's causing this pollution, we know what it's doing to our health. The question is, what are the solutions? What can we do, you and me as regular citizens, to just try and make our lives a little bit better?
The setting up of the Air Quality Index has removed all doubts that we are breathing poison. Nearly every day air quality is at hazardous to health levels, if not bad. So the next question that begs to be asked is what can be done about it? CSE has several suggestions, and some of them are: implement the Air Quality Index with health advisories and pollution emergency measures, leapfrog emission standards to Euro 5 in 2017 and Euro 6 by 2020. Nationwide Euro 4 should be in place by this year. Control dieselization with tax measures. Diesel has been branded as a Class 1 carcinogen by WHO. Need fiscal measures to keep clean fuels like CNG competitive vis-a-vis diesel. Improve and scale up public transport and last-mile connectivity. Implement the proposed plans for mass transport networks. Restrain growth of cars with parking restraints and taxes. Stop farm fires in the National Capital Region. Need natural gas for power plants and stringent action on coal-based power plants. While much of the action needs to come from both the central and state governments, the third question that needs to be asked is what can we do to improve the air quality, at least in our living spaces, if not outside? And the answer seems to lie with Kamal Metal, an Indian environmental activist and CEO of Baharpur Business Centre and Software Technology Incubator Park based in New Delhi, India. After becoming allergic to Delhi's polluted air in 1992, Mittal discovered 3 common house plants that helped reduce pollutants in the air indoors.
It was mid-90s when I became allergic to Delhi's air, and the doctors told me to leave Delhi. And having lived in Delhi for many years and having friends here, I thought, let me see if I can find a solution rather than leave the city. So started on a research path in trying out plants, and fortunately I was lucky and I found that there were 3 simple plants which would do the work during the day and at night, and also remove views. As far as the vehicle population of Delhi is concerned, we're talking about 7.5 million vehicles, but we have an existing law which says every vehicle every 3 months has to get a PUC done. The next point is the PUC, the pollution standards need to be revised, because the car engines have changed over time, and whatever we designed in terms of pollutants or the standards for PUC are now ancient. We need new standards. So this is, I think, the lowest hanging fruit in terms of what the government can do.
As consumers and as citizens, we are responsible for the kind of cars we buy, the rules we flout, and the apathy we show in fighting for our right to clean air. It is a terrifying thought that for most people, the very basic act of survival breathing, which is meant to keep us alive, could be the cause of death. We live in a time of great knowledge, like never before. We have no excuse to live like we're ignorant, because our greatest legacy is at stake, our children.
It's an excellent initiative, if you ask me, because what we are trying to do is mass awareness, and mass awareness means it's something which we are trying to change. It's a habit which we are trying to change. It's a lifestyle which we are trying to change. And Philips is also into something called as health continuum, and prevention is one of the things. So what we are trying to tell people is basically prevent from breathing, toxic air. So in my view, we should really look at outdoor, indoor, and also look at from every sect, every angle. Basically, it's youngsters, it is adults, it is elderly people. Because youngsters are going to be our future. And if they breathe toxic air today, and if they are going to be in trouble, we are going to have a generation which is going to be weak and which is not going to be delivering what we want as a country, which we are aspiring to be great by 2050.
Professor J.M. Dave, expert advisor to the UNDP and WHO and former chairman of the Pollution Act Rule Committee, voices the same concern. He began monitoring the air quality back in 1963.
At that time, you see, we had two monitoring standard norms. One was 20 micron and 10 micron. We did not have 2.5. At that time, PM10 used to be in a range of 150, 200. You see, all the engines, all the way from Ahmedabad, you also recorded a very high. Jaipur, we had a station recorded very high. Delhi recorded very high. Kanpur recorded very high. But Bhopal, Chennai, Calcutta, they had all below 50 microns.
But the situation has changed today, with PM 2.5 being recorded in the higher ranges.
It has to be set right. You see, Delhi has to be set right. Now, there are multiple issues that we can address. First and foremost, we have to address the vehicle pollution.
Through the next few weeks, we'll be looking at air pollution in and around our homes and how we can step up to ensure we breathe cleaner air.